Good morning, everyone. Welcome to those who are attending in person. Welcome to those attending online. It's an impressive turnout for a Monday morning on a holiday week, but we really appreciate that. My name is David Satola. I'm the Chief Counsel of the Legal Advisory Services and Knowledge Unit here in the World Bank Legal Department. We're very pleased this morning to have some opening remarks from Chris Stevens, our General Counsel. That will be followed by introduction to the program by Balmes Arias, who is one of our interns this fall, who is in the unit that I'm the head of. And then we're hearing from two of our lawyers who came into the legal department via internship or fellowship programs, Prachi and Gustavo. So without any further ado on this lovely Monday morning, I will turn it over to you, Chris. Thank you.
Well, happy Monday. Thanks, David, and good morning to everyone. And thank you for joining us. I think the turnout is very strong, generally, and for a Monday, so that's very encouraging. And it does show that there is a lot of interest in hopefully learning more about the World Bank and the career path. So it's nice that today's session is the Pathways to International Organizations. And as David mentioned, we're pleased that Balmes has put this together. It was his brainchild, and we congratulate you for organizing this and hope that it's a productive session for you. There's a lot to talk about, more than you'll probably be able to fit in the allotted time, but we look forward to being able to convey to you some of at least a high-level understanding of the work that we do at the World Bank across our 5 organizations, what we do in the legal department, and what are the pathways to international organizations. I think if there was one piece of advice that I would convey to young lawyers, it is to think about honing your technical expertise. That's what takes such an enormous amount of time. And initially and early in a career here, that's your value proposition. Over time, judgment comes from experience and working with others and getting a better sense of the business. But there's a whole arc to proving your value proposition, and we can talk about that. If there's something that never changes, it's that the place is always changing. And I think that's a result and a reflection of the world, and the world in particular in which we live. We were working with countries that are either lesser developed or under some degree of turbulence, violence, strain, and that's where our value add is highest, and that's where we're focused most. And those circumstances are changing rapidly, as are those affecting donor countries and the rest of the world. And so we always have to change and adapt to be able to provide the best services and products and support that we can to do the best outcomes we can achieve on the ground in all those different circumstances. And that, I think, is one of the things that makes it so much fun. The part that really makes it fun to work here, though, is working with people like all of you, seeing a really diverse and energized group of people who has a genuine interest in the work we do is something that energizes all of us. So welcome. Thank you for coming, and hope you enjoy this session. Balmes?
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone across the world. My name is Balmes Arias. I'm an intern here at the World Bank Legal Vice Presidency. It is an honor to welcome you to this session, Pathways to International Organizations. And before we begin, I want to thank those that made this possible. Tinyade, who is not in this room, which I bothered a lot. Georgie, Christian, all my fellow interns in the room. And of course, to other universities and professors who helped share the invitation. And a special thanks to my supervisor, David Satola, to whom, when I came up with this idea to discuss it, he didn't place any roadblocks in front of me. Instead, he helped me find paths around them. And finally, to all of you for coming, for those in this room and those connected from the other side of the world, thank you. Before even standing here today, I was very surprised by the amount of people that tuned in. Over 500 people registered from 110 countries. For me, that was incredible. It showed that young people around the world still have dreams, ambitions, and desires to change their lives. And this is why this event was created, because I too was one of those young. So congratulations. You took your first step into an international career, into a global career, and I think that deserves a round of applause for yourself. So this is how this session will go about. First, my name is Balmes, and I will begin talking about my past, the exact steps I took to go into 3 different international organizations. Then, Gustavo, to my right, will speak about his journey. And finally, Prachi will close about her insights and personal lessons. After that, we will have a Q&A sessions, and finally, closing remarks. So where did it all begin? It started for me in the U.S. Embassy in Santo Domingo, in a department called INL, which stands for International Narcotics and Law Enforcement. This was a very competitive process. Over 160 people applied. Only 12 of us got accepted. That's 7.5. Very little. The first picture here is my fellow interns from back home, which today many are very close to me. There's also a picture that was my first event at the U.S. Embassy, which, fun fact, I still use that as my profile picture. In the top right was my first high-level meeting with the president and judges of the Supreme Court in the Dominican Republic. And just below that one is another high-level meeting with former Attorney General and current Attorney Generals, and among others. After that came the Organization for American States. This one, even more people applied. 1,560, which 68. That's a very low acceptance rate of 4.35. As you can see in the image, 56 from DC and 12 from national offices. I was in one of those national offices. The picture to the right of that is the opening ceremony for a very high training dedicated to 65 officials from around 28 different countries. The one on the top right again is an international expert that came to teach them. And I was lucky enough to be inside of that session, so I learned just as if I was one of the officials. Below that one is the closing ceremony for the capacitation building, where the Vice President of the Dominican Republic, the Minister of Police, the Minister of Presidency, the current Attorney General, and many others. And finally, here at the World Bank, where 600 people applied for the legal internship program, and only 8 of us got accepted. That is a mere 1.33%, very low. And to be honest with you, DC has been incredible. I get to see the White House every day I come to work. I've been to the executive board director's room. I met the president of the World Bank, R.J. Banga, the senior managing director, Axel van Truxenberg. And I have even met Dominican representatives here in DC, which I never thought I was going to meet. For example, the OAS ambassador to the Dominican Republic, Mayelin Cordero, Senator of the Dominican Republic, Omar Fernandez, Hector Albizu, which is the central bank governor, and Magin Diaz, which is the Minister of Finance. So I am not showing these pictures and numbers to brag, but to show that it is possible. If I made it, I am sure all of you can do as well. So this session is important for a couple of reasons. First, to share knowledge. Before I found out about the World Bank, I had no idea what it was. When I found out about it, I thought it was just an international financial institutions where the organization gave money to other countries. But in reality, it's more than that. People here come from all over the world. As you see, the people to your left, to your right, are probably not from your hometown. So this is why this event is created, to share knowledge. Then, to guide. Because the process of entering an international organization can feel intimidating for most of us. For that reason, we want to inspire you. Inspire you because many of us come from places where opportunities in global international are very limited and feel distant. And finally, to break barriers. Barriers of misinformation, fear, or simply not knowing the steps and processes to take. Now I want to talk about what this event would not do. This would not guarantee a job or internship in the World Bank, so don't get excited. This would not be a shortcut to entry here or any other international organizations. And most importantly, this is not a magic formula. There's no magic wand. Now that we cleared up what we want to talk about, let's talk about what we will talk about and what this will do. First, we will provide correct strategies to implement, provide guidance based on all real experiences and lessons, create roadmaps to help you avoid common mistakes, and most importantly, increase your chances of getting behind the gates of international organizations. Why do I say this? Because in the US Embassy, the gates were huge. The doors were literally explosive proof, and it's simply impossible to get in. The way I got in was by renovating my passport. I'm a US citizen, I had to go into the embassy, renovate my passport, and security was extremely strict. Phones weren't even allowed inside. And when I was waiting in line for my name to be called, I was just thinking and imagining myself actually working in there. So the structure will unfold the following way. I will talk about the application process, the interview process, the inside process of when you get the job or internship, and bonus tips. Application process. I want to start off with a question for all of you. What do you think is the first step to get into an international organization? Please feel free to raise your virtual hand if you're connected online, or raise your hand, and once the floor is given to you, please speak into the mic. You must click the button in front of you. Yes. Please approach one of the mics and click the button to talk. Push to talk. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the first step is to know the function of each international organization, what's the main purpose of the organization, and what's the main project of the international organization.
Anyone else? Push to talk, please.
Sorry, my name is Eric Kokul. I think the first step is to apply based on a job that has been advertised.
Hello, good morning. I think the first step would be to know your why you want to go into the organization.
Are there any hands raised virtually? No. Okay.
I would like to add, for me, it's always also like really focusing on why, setting up your personal goals, and really looking what your personal values and what you achieve in a life are in line with the potential international organizations around.
There's a question online. Please. What is the question? Can you read it out loud? Well, before we answer this question, I want to talk about 5 myths about getting into international organizations. The first one is that you need connections. I'm thinking about someone in this room right now when I talk about this, and that is not true. Because first, I didn't have any connections in any of the international organizations, neither in the US Embassy, the Organization for American States, and especially here at the World Bank. There's also a very rigorous process to actually getting hired or approved for the program, which is that the panel consists of multiple people, and one of them being someone from HR making sure that guidelines are followed. The second myth is that you need years of experience. This is not true. Internships exist precisely because many people are not expected to have years of experience. Me, I haven't even graduated yet. Myth number 3, you need to study abroad in the best universities in the world. I come from the Dominican Republic, a university called Pontificia Universidad Católica Madre Maestra. I know that's a mouthful. And this is not true. As long as you apply and dedicate yourself, you will find a way. Myth number 4, you need to be perfect. No, you don't need to be perfect. Organizations are not looking for this. They're looking for potential and to build on that potential. And finally, you need money to get in. This is quite controversial. Yes, it is very hard to come from the other side of the world to get in, but there are ways around this. For example, your university, there might be some type of program that they could help you with. There's also ministries that dedicate to invest in people that have potential, especially young students. And finally, since COVID, there have been a lot of internships that are virtually or hybrid. So, to answer the question, the first step is actually, even though all of you had great answers, is to do research. You cannot apply, you cannot find opportunities, you cannot get accepted to somewhere you don't know exists. So you must apply. You must do research. And there's many ways to do research. You can do a Google search of international organizations. You can do social media. Personally, I found out about the U.S. Embassy internship in their official Instagram accounts and also for the Organization of American States. If you have friends or teachers that work in these places, talk to them. Tell them how they got in. Also colleagues. And finally, university programs. This one is a cheat code, in my opinion, because if your university has a program with an international organization, you basically do not compete with everyone. You only compete with those that apply to the internship or job opportunity. And finally, my personal favorite, ChatGPT. All you need to do is ask it a question, a simple prompt. Hey, Chat, search for 10 local internship programs in international organizations related to your career. For me, it will be law. In your city, once again, for me, it would be Santo Domingo. And after that, make sure to include only opportunities open to students or recent graduates with deadlines, requirements, and application links. This will make your job a lot easier. It would appear in your screen and you just need to click it. After you do that, just read about the program. Now let's talk about the application competencies. Competencies is a combination of knowledge, skills, and behaviors that allow a person to perform effectively in a specific role or situation. Everything you highlight should reflect these competencies. And there's 2 types. The core competencies, which is the ones everyone should have. Communication, teamwork, problem solving, organization, planning, confidentiality, accountability. And then there's the managerial competencies, which are the ones that truly separate you from the rest, which is adaptability, leadership, vision, how to problem solve. Finally, let's talk about the CV. This is another big step. And I just want to make sure that no one believes that their CV is perfect, because there is no magic wand, as I mentioned earlier. But there are very much bad CVs. In order to have a good CV and not a bad one, you must keep it concise and easy to scan. Why scan? Because nowadays most of these international organizations use AI to have the first look at it. After this, you must tailor your CV to that specific organization. Use keywords and synonyms. For example, there might be keywords that organizations really aspire. Let's use teamwork as an example. Collaboration, cooperation, and partnership. Now, how do I make a good CV? It's simple. There is this college There's this Harvard College bullet point resume template, which basically outlines everything you need to do. You just need to fill in the dots and put your own personal data. It begins with your name and a short sentence at the top of your home campus, city, and address. Then your college education, where you just put your GPA, your thesis if you already graduated, and relevant coursework. For me, it would be some international competitions that I participated in. After that, your high school name, and then you move to experiences. You begin with the most recent one, and make sure to use action verbs, and don't talk in first person. Lastly, in the bottom, skills. This is where you provide your technical skills, where you can mention some of the keywords, so teamwork, collaboration, partnership, the amount of languages you speak. I would rather, in my personal opinion, to use just fluent and not the circles people put as 4 stars or 5 stars. This will make it easier for AI to understand it. And now the cover letter, the structure. There's a structure of dividing it into 3. The first one is the introduction. It clearly expresses your interest and share the reason behind your application. This is where you can not repeat what is in your CV. This is one mistake people do. A cover letter is not for you to state what is already on your CV. For this, now you move on to the main body, where you add context to what's in your CV, your academic journey, key roles and accomplishments, highlight what most relevant in your career, and show your competencies with specific real examples. Once again, there's an opportunity for you to use the keywords and synonyms. And finally, the conclusion. Summarize your message and make a strong impression. Your cover letter should not repeat your CV once again. It should add meaning to it, explain why you're applying, give context to your experiences, and highlight what matters most. Some weak cover letters are generic templates to use. These are the ones that you just send it to everyone and every international organizations, where vague statements lacking specificability. No clear alignments with job description, lack of enthusiasm or personality, or in other words, AI generated, and missed opportunities to highlight unique skills. Now, what does a strong cover letter look like? Where you tailor to that specific role. Clear specific examples of your achievements, strong alignment with the job opportunities, show you genuine enthusiasm and personality, and highlight what makes you, you. Now moving on into the interview process. There are 4 types of questions. The first one being traditional questions, second, technical questions, third, puzzle questions, and fourth, competency-based questions. What are traditional questions? These are the ones that prepare for common interview questions that help assess your fit within the organization, allowing you to showcase your strength and understanding of the role. One example of this is tell us about yourself. This is one that helps relieve the pressure, the tense from you. And this one you should be an expert about, because no one in this world should know more about you than yourself. Moving on to technical questions, which access your role-specific knowledge and structure thinking, which to expect inquiries that require examples from your experience to demonstrate your capability in the relevant fields. An example would be explain what a firewall does and how it differs from an intrusion detection system, IDS. Now, I am not a cybersecurity master. I am a lawyer. This is just an example. Puzzle questions. It would assess your logic and problem-solving skills during interviews, allowing employers to evaluate your ability to think critically and approach challenges creatively. An example would be how many NBA basketballs can fit in this room. That is basically impossible to answer. And interviewers, panelists are not expecting a correct answer. If not, the way I would personally answer this question is the first step I would do to figure out how many basketball fit in this room, as you can see it's very large, will be to find the area of the room. That will be length times width times height. And after that, probably ask ChatGPT and give me the answer. And finally, competency-based questions. These questions access a candidate's real-world skills through specific examples, focusing on teamwork, leadership, and problem-solving abilities, essential for success and international organization. One of them would be, describe a moment when you failed and what you learned from it. This is important. And to answer this type of question, the competency-based question, use the CAR method. The CAR method is a structured approach to answering competency-based interview questions by detail the context, action, and results of your experiences for clarity and impact. The context is where you describe the situation or background. The action is the explanation of the specific action you took, and the result, the outcome you got from this. Finally, some interview tips. Wear your best outfit. Today I'm wearing my favorite and best outfit with my favorite tie. Maintain eye contact. Listen to understand the question. It is okay to take a pause before answering. If you're online, make sure that the camera is at eye level. Prepare questions. This is important because interviews are not a monologue. They are conversations. And finally, smile. This is very hard for me. I'm a serious guy, so I don't smile very often. However, it would be a great advantage. Now, what does succeeding inside organizations look like? First, let your work talk for itself. The first picture is me in the Capitol Hill the first time I came to DC. This is not now, this is in the US Embassy internship. And when I first joined, I was told about this work trip that the embassy was going to do here. They told me that I would basically be in vacation. 2 months in, they grew from vacation to that I would be holding down the fort of the department. And then finally, 1 month after that, they randomly came to me and told me and asked me if I was willing to come in this work trip to Miami and Washington, D.C. This is because the work that I did inside was valuable, and my supervisors acknowledged that. Now, you need to get exposures once you're inside. And I'm talking about internships, because in internships, you're usually here for a very short time, usually 3 months. And during this time, you need to make sure that you get to know people, know the work from the organization, and there's ways to do this. For example, if you're in an intern cave, as I currently am, you try to work yourself and find an open spot in the 6th floor where your supervisors are and your colleagues. Another way to get exposure is to ask questions. Take the opportunity, take advantage of when there's events, just to simply raise your hand and ask the questions. Like that, your name will be known, people will get to know you, and a lot of lawyers, even people that work inside the organization or any other career, would appreciate you for doing a question that they themselves wanted to ask. But be careful with this one, because if you're in a very important meeting with your supervisors, you should not ask a question, interrupt the flow of the meeting. Instead, just wait a little bit, and after the meeting is over, approach your supervisor and ask them what you had doubts about. And finally, have ideas. This is one of the ideas that I came up with before my internship ends in just 2 days. Finally, to end this part of the session, I want to give you some professional advice that I've received from people here in the World Bank. The first one comes from the president of the World Bank, President Banga, which he said to me in a meeting, to take risk. We are young. We don't have too much to worry about. And if we fall, it is very easy for us to get back up. Another one is from Axel van Truxenberg, the senior managing director. He said that we need shapers, not administrators. Marwan Malouf, which is a senior counsel, is to invest in engagement. What does this mean? If you have an interview that is online, can you go to the interview in person? Ask. Make the effort to go in person. The panelists would appreciate this. And finally, one that stuck strongly with me was one by a Dominican, Rodolfo Poe. He said, the diaspora you dream of still exists. So don't let your dreams end. And thank you very much. Now we'll move to Gustavo.
Thank you very much, Balmes. Let me time myself here so that I leave enough time for Prachi with way more wisdom than I have. And thank you for you and for David for organizing these events. Honestly, I wish I heard a lot of what you said here today before I was applying to the World Bank and coming to the US. So thank you very much for that. And I'm also happy to be sharing this panel with Prachi, with whom I work a lot and I learn a lot every day. So, your remarks were extraordinary, and I want to build on those, particularly on the point that you made about research. So let me get on to that. And the advice I have is built on something that I see as both as a curse and as a blessing. And what is that? As I walk down the corridors here at the World Bank, I see people who come from all different walks of the legal profession. So I see people coming from governments, NGOs, in-house lawyers, law firms, and more broadly, any other area of law where law is involved. So why is this a curse? Because I basically cannot tell you if you follow a specific path, that path would certainly lead to you to get a job at an international organization. But why is that a blessing? Because that allows you to leverage whatever experience you have at this very moment to work your way into an international organization. So let me tell a little bit about myself and give you two final advice on building on my own experience. So after I graduated from law school in Brazil, Fundação Getúlio Vargas, I went on to work in a law firm as an anti-corruption lawyer for 5 years. And during this period, I built a lot of skills and experiences, and this was excellent time. And I was at a point in my career, 5 years on, that I wanted to check, do a little stock taking where I was, where I wanted to be. And at that very moment, it was actually a coincidence. I was reading a book called Chasing the Flame from Samantha Power about the former High Commissioner for Human Rights called Sergio Vieira de Mello, a Brazilian. And that book really inspired me at that point in time that I wanted to convert my career into working for the public good. But the question then was, how will I do that? Some of the tips Balmes just shared with us all here today. But I wanted to understand, first of all, what were the works that were available in the field. I had no concrete idea of what I was getting into and what actually working in international organizations, working with international development actually meant. So I went into the websites of all those organizations and I tried to scan whatever was the legal department these organizations were doing. And then I started emailing people, messaging on LinkedIn, and trying to get in contact with people who were working at this organization and could tell me, all right, this is what I do on a regular Tuesday, so this is what my work is. And building on that, I built this very lengthy spreadsheet because I'm a very organized person. So I tried to organize in the spreadsheet what are the skills that I had. And I thought that, all right, these skills, they are somewhat translatable coming from a law firm practice. But the question for me was mainly a lot of the requirements. I could not convince myself that I met those requirements when I was working in a law firm in Brazil. So I was like, right, how can I transition from this experience that I have, the skills that I have, into working for an international organization? So after all these conversations and after my beautiful spreadsheet, I decided to see what was the shortest way that I would do that. And I came to the realization that an LLM program was what would allow me to get the type of exposure and the type of experiences that I need. So I applied several law schools, got admitted in some, and selected the one, New York University in New York, that building on what I already had, it offered a lot of things that I needed from LLM. So the first part of it, and that's like first advice that I have, like do check when you are making these transitions, and if you're intending or applying to an LLM, please check if the university that you're applying to makes sense for your career, if it makes sense with what experiences you have and what you want to achieve. But then at NYU, I was able to become a research assistant for an Institute of International Law and Justice, a transitional justice scholar. I worked for 2 student organizations. I was doing an internship at the United Nations. My coursework was entirely focused on what I wanted to build, what I wanted to show. And at the end of this internship, this translated into a fellowship that was here at the World Bank for 3 months. And this fellowship, after I worked closely with our mentor, Vikram Raghavan, this converted into a short-term consultancy, and 1.5 years later, it translated into an extended-term consultancy. And from all of that, the 2 main lessons that I want you to take from this are, first of all, do your research, and I think that there's a point that Balmes touched upon, and I think that Chris also mentioned, honing your technical expertise. So do your research. Do not be shy. Go out there, talk to people. I think that you're already doing this by attending this very event. I think that this is the first good step. But do not be shy. Email people, talk to people, send LinkedIn messages, try to get in contact with people, and actually do extensive research on the jobs that you want to achieve. Because once you understand the position that you are applying to, once you actually understand that, you are able to be way more effective and strategic to the positions you're applying. And I mean, I know because I applied to hundreds of positions before, and not all of them were very effective because my skills, my experiences, they were not a good match. But when I understood that I could focus on a certain type of positions and a certain type of skills that I need to build, I was able to plan myself, right, how can I meet that in 2 years or 1 year? And then I start to build on that and achieve this. And second advice that I would give you, it's just to be organized around that, because it's very easy to get confused about so many opportunities that you see, so many. Balmes just mentioned, if you throw on ChatGPT, you can get 10 possible applications that you can immediately track. But try to see from those which ones you are a better fit. And then really focus on doing excellent work on that application rather than doing medium applications for 10 things that you are being screened out by AI. So this is the second advice that I'll give you. And happy to answer questions a little bit later about what we actually do here at the bank. So over back to you, Balmes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Gustavo, for your insights. Round of applause. Now moving on to Prachi.
Thank you, Balmes. Thank you, everyone. I think one of the key things to highlight, as Gustavo and Balmes mentioned, we have a diverse set of lawyers here at the bank, and everyone that I work with comes from a different background. Some are technical lawyers who've worked in specific sectors, like David, a former telecom lawyer. Gustavo has worked in anti-corruption before. And as for me, when I was working in India, I worked for a financial institution. My law school in India allowed us to do 2 years of traineeship. Some of you who come from common law countries might be more familiar with this, where you can study and work. And so I worked at a financial institution, and my work was completely different in terms of working on loan documentation, working on very legal agreements and drafting and everything. And one of the things that happened when I applied for my LLM, and through the LLM started applying for jobs, was how to make sense of my experiences working on loan documentation, working on litigation for banks in India, into something that translates to working with international organizations. And in doing so, I started talking to more lawyers, and I had assumed always that you need a strong background in public international law, international arbitration, and some very specific fields to get into international organizations. As I started talking to more and more people, I realized that was not the case. And again, everyone will have a different pathway and everyone will have a different way that worked for them. But having a strong set of technical skills in the end, I think that is what helped me and a lot of the lawyers I work with. So whatever your technical expertise is, make sure you're getting very good at that. Talk to people who have come from that field and now work at international organizations. Look up the jobs that you want to do in these organizations and then trace back people's journeys. And you'll be very surprised at the diverseness of fields and experiences that people come from. And that's just going to be a short part of what worked. So I think very important to talk to more people, get out of your comfort zone, and not assume that there's one thing that will work for everyone. One of the things I wanted to talk about in this is having worked at the World Bank a little bit now, coming from India, coming from, again, not a very well-known law school in India, and again, then going to NYU for their LLM, and working at the bank on different aspects. There are some things I wish I had known back then, and one was talking to more people. I think I was one of those people who is always hesitant to reach out on LinkedIn or just cold email people from career events. And now that I'm on the other side after a few years, it's very surprising how many people respond and how many people want to respond. If anything, that stops us from responding is just maybe not getting to your email in time, or just kind of something coming in the way of doing that. But don't hesitate to send out a reminder. It always jerks us out of our stupor and is like, oh, wait, I need to get back to this person who emailed me 4 weeks ago. I should not leave them hanging. So again, I think I gave up too easily back in law school and during my LLM when I would message someone, not hear back. So reach out. Most people want to talk to you, want to get back, want to share how they worked on their career paths. The other thing I did not realize was just not at the bank, but at all other international organizations, there's so many pathways for lawyers. And now that I'm on the other side and I work on partnerships with other international organizations, I'm surprised at how many lawyers I meet that are not doing traditional legal jobs, right? So a lot of international organizations spend a lot of time doing public policy, working with governments, and a major part of that work is legal. So your administrative law background, your constitutional law background, that often translates into positions with international organizations that are advisory in nature, that may not sit in the legal function, but will have a lot of impact and will in fact use your legal training. So look beyond just, transactional or institutional legal jobs, because there's a lot more fields where lawyers can make an impact that are probably not even advertised as legal jobs. And I think the third thing I wanted to touch upon, because I have now been on the other side of the panel that I used to often interview for, and like Balmes and Gustavo have talked about, there's so many things you can do to make your application better. And one of the things that I'm constantly surprised by is how much effort goes into reading your applications beyond the original screening. And so the cover letter I would highlight is so important, because we literally go back to it multiple times during an interview or a selection process. We will look at everyone's cover letters side by side, especially if you make it to the interview stage. We will go through it, see how your CV and your cover letter talk to each other. And that's why I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to make sure your cover letter is customized. Nothing off-putting than the first paragraph having the wrong organization, the wrong post, the wrong application or requisition number, or some other very small but can be a glaring mistake. So one thing I highly recommend is after you've written your cover letter, take a step back from it, leave it for a few hours and come back and see if you can look at it from a different perspective. I know when you're applying to hundreds of jobs that they can start to blur together, but having a very customized cover letter is super important. Just taking some feedback from the panels and the interviews I've done in the last couple of years, some applications that have really stood out, and again, this is just things I would have loved to know back when I was applying to these jobs. Don't be afraid to be personal. I think two of the cover letters that have really stood out to me recently is one person who went to law school during the night. So along with his job, he went back to law school during his non-legal job and got a law degree from a part-time program or an executive program. And this was part of their cover letter on their journey. And it impressed me and my colleagues on the panel so much that we spent some time talking in his interview about this aspect. Someone who took a career break to go with their spouse on a diplomatic mission, or to take some time off for parenting their kid, right? And this was part of their cover letter. And I really appreciated the fact that they highlighted it up front, and it helped explain so many aspects of their application. So don't be afraid to get personal in your cover letter. And I think as you're looking at internships and all of these positions, don't be afraid to go out of the 5 requirements that have been spelled out, right? And if you have a field that is different from what is being advertised, tell us in your cover letter how you can make that shift. A lot of these jobs require the same legal skills: legal research, writing, drafting, representation, organization. So it doesn't really matter if you organized something for the General Assembly, or as part of your job managing conferences in anti-corruption or in finance and banking, right? There's always transferability in all of these skills, and make sure we understand that. You can come from a regulatory background, a policy background, and still showcase all of these skills in your cover letter. So I think that is what I wanted to cover in this opening session, but of course, happy to talk further, answer any questions you may have, and like I said, always feel free to reach out.
Thank you very much, Prachi, for your very valuable insights. We will now move on to the Q&A session. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to open your mic or raise your hand. Make sure to state your name and what country you're from. And to begin this part, I want to ask each of you the same question. If you could go back to the beginning of your career, what is one thing you would do differently besides reaching out to people?
Thank you very much, Balmes, and thank you, Prachi, for this interesting exposition. I think that there's a lot there that is very, 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 very valuable. Something that I could have done differently, I think that now that you excluded speaking to people, that would be my answer. I think that it's something that you touched and that the president has mentioned too. I think that taking a little bit more risk. I was very risk averse at the beginning of my career. I was like, all right, I want to follow this law firm track. I see all my friends following this. I see all the people that are graduated from the same law school that I did following this track. And I was not necessarily listening to my own impulses or things that I wanted to try out. I think that this is the moment when you are early in your career that you can really experiment and see different areas that you might like. You might like some, you might not like others, and this is totally fine. So I think that taking risk is something that down the line, when you are writing your cover letter, you can tell an interesting story. Thank you.
I think I would resonate with that part as well. And I think while I kind of moved sectors, or I applied to a different type of pathway than I did, I think something I would have done differently looking back is, even when you're in law school or even when you're studying, you don't have to be restricted to the type of classes you take or the type of opportunities you engage with that are only related to your field of work. There's often a lot of overlap between what international organizations do and the technical field that you're studying in. So I wish I had done more of that when I was at NYU or in my law school years, kind of looking at banking or finance from an international organization's perspective. I think I came into that quite later as I was studying. And there were so many more opportunities. One of them, again, I think, Balmes, you mentioned it in your opening introduction, it was very important, is participating in these different conferences or taking different opportunities. And something I've realized as I've been working here at the bank is you can volunteer for a lot of things that are not really strictly related to your field of work. Conferences, writing papers, applying for research opportunities. And thankfully, I have been lucky to have that opportunity as I'm working at the bank. But doing that early on would have made it even better. So, if a professor is doing an interesting research paper, writing a book, volunteer. They often need research expertise. They often need help on these different aspects, and you get to meet a lot of interesting people. So if you think you want to learn more about something, use your volunteering time.
Thank you, Prachi. Thank you, Gustavo. We have someone online that wants to ask a question. I believe your name is Ola. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Once again, state your name, your country, and who you're directing your question to. Feel free to open your mic, Ola.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Ola Adesunloy. I'm coming from the US. My question is to all of the panelists who I thank for being here today. I just wanted to know what are some traits or things that you believe that you did during your first position or current position at an international organization that you believe made you successful?
There's another person online. Your name is Kabassian. Sorry if I mispronounced that, but please feel free to open your mic.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Lidikwa Habasiani from Botswana. I'm currently a student, a pro law student at Loyola University. I've been listening. I see it's like the pathway to international organizations it's through internships. But I realize most of the internships, there's an age restriction. And for somebody like me, maybe I'll call myself a late bloomer because I'm a bit older. And I've been practicing the law for almost 20 years. And it's only now that I'm really having a serious interest in joining international organizations. And plus my master's is also bringing up that fire now. But I see, given the fact that it seems like for people to move, the pathway is really internships. And I realize internships seems to have an age limit and it cuts me out. What is another way I can go about it?
Any questions in the room?
Hello, my name is Jago from Spain.
Marian from Germany, and I actually would have had the same question about upper age limits when applying to international organizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Julius. Please remember to wait for your name to be called. Go ahead.
So I had a question for you, Balmes. Which strength from your internship journey has had the biggest impact on who you are today?
Any more questions? That's way too much. I think we could. Okay, we're going to start answering some questions. We're going to begin, or me, I'm going to begin about the internship limitation, requirement, age limits. There are many internships that don't require age limits. And you mentioned that Pathway International to international organizations starts by starting an internship. This is my path. There's many different ones. There's fellowships, there's coming from other jobs, there's coming from the private sector, there's coming from the public sector. So there is not one specific road.
Thank you. So I'm starting with what made you successful. I think that being generally curious and open to work with things outside of your area of comfort, because more often than not, you're not asked to answer the questions you already know the answer. You're asked to answer something or prepare something that you've never seen in your life. So be generally open and open-minded and available, most of all, to help and to make whatever needs happen. I think it's what made me successful, and I think that would be something that I would treasure a lot. On the age limit and internships, my advice would be just see the terms of reference. So when you see a position that is open at the website of any international organization, just see what the requirements are, and see what you have and what you don't have. Whatever you don't have, make a plan for the next 1 or 2 years to acquire and meet those requirements. You don't need to start as an internship. You can start as a staff level position, so there is no limit to that. But you need to have the skills, and you need to explain and articulate how do you meet those requirements. And if you don't at this time in your career plan is to work for this organization, there is no entry date. You just need to have the skills, and once you develop those, you are sure to have a great chance to getting in. Prachi.
Thanks, Gustavo. I think let me come to the second question first on the age limit. So I think, again, like Balmes and Gustavo said, there's no one specific path. I think talking from the other side, some of the colleagues who have joined our team in recent years have been through lateral hiring programs. So not some of us came through internships that then became entry-level positions, and then we progressed through the different levels at the bank. But many of my colleagues have recently joined through lateral programs. They come from government, regulatory institutions, or other law firms and private sector companies. And these are positions that have 5-year, 10-year PQE requirements, and these are basically where you have spent some time working on other aspects. And I think to all colleagues or interested people who have had some experience and now want to transition to international organizations and these programs, I would highly recommend looking at those types of positions. They come up cyclically, of course, as with many other positions at the bank, but these are the best type of programs, and these are targeted towards people in the field who have had technical or other experience that is different or that builds upon some past experience. I think something that I feel was very helpful during my first position, again, Gustavo hit the nail on the head. You're not going to be asked questions that you're familiar with. Often with international organizations, even if you come from a law firm or the private sector, this is a different type of bank. And that is something that I had to get used to, that the questions, although they were related to financing and development, which I had studied, weren't exactly the same. So kind of volunteering to do more or like learn more has definitely helped. But I think what really made a difference was using some of the skills I had in the past. Like I mentioned, a lot of the work I used to do was on documentation of loans and agreements. And using those drafting skills really went a long way, because in the end, we are also signing legal agreements, which have very similar characteristics. We are also writing research memos for senior management or for other colleagues that synthesizes a very complex issue in a limited word count. So all of these were skills I had before, but I had to just use them in a different aspect, and continuing to do that and volunteering to take on all of these types of tasks helped. One thing I remember is, because I came from a financial institution, even lawyers had to use Excel. And in one of my assignments, I was like, oh, I can work on that. And it was basically a massive data sheet. And one of my mentors and supervisors was like, oh, you can use Excel. And that meant we didn't have to send something to another team and wait for the analysis if you could do it. So you may have skills in there. Just volunteer to kind of use them in different ways and let your work speak for itself. I think I cannot highlight how important that is. And Balmes, you mentioned it earlier. There's going to be lots of networking opportunities at international organizations that are, of course, very central to what makes these internships and these job opportunities crucial. But if you don't perform your core tasks in a way that shows that you're good at them, that's the networking and the other aspects are not going to be super helpful.
Thank you, Prachi. I'm going to go back to your question, Yago, which was what has shaped me what experiences from these international organizations have shaped me to be the Balmes today. And one of them, once again, I'm speaking from an intern point of view, is having a good balance between the work that I'm assigned and the networking opportunities, the events that go after work, and really, most importantly, making a connection with my supervisors, my colleagues. Also, maybe it's because I'm new to this type of field, but for me, networking activities are a little bit superficial. I'm not used to them. Maybe I'm not good at them. But a good place that I find myself making a real relationship is in the work. Today, I've built a relationship with Gustavo and Prachi, with David Satola, with Chris that I met today for the first time officially, formally, and really take advantage of that. Don't just focus on the work. Don't hide in your office if you're an intern. Make sure, once again, to get exposure. We have another question online from Kelvin Daniel. Please unmute your mic, state your name, your country, and who you direct your question to.
Oh, thank you, Balmes. My name is Daniel Okuta. I'm calling you from Nairobi, Kenya, within East Africa. So first of all, thank you to the organizers for this very well and elaborate session. We do appreciate it. So my question goes to Prachi and Mr. Gustavo. For African professionals entering global institutions, which skill gaps do international organizations consistently observe? Oh, thank you.
Any questions in the room?
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Nancy Imadi. I'm originally from Ghana, but I'm in Georgetown Law, where I am specializing in technology law and policy. My question would have been for Mr. Satola, but I'll still ask, and then hopefully I can get some reaction or later get some information from him. So my question is this. Since its establishment in 1946, the World Bank has remained committed to ending extreme poverty and boosting shared prosperity on a livable planet. Yet, the world we live in today is vastly different from what that envisioned nearly 8 decades ago. Emerging technologies, particularly artificial intelligence, have the potential to transform economies, societies, and reduce poverty. While these innovations present immense opportunities to advance the development of a livable planet, they must be deployed in ways that are safe, ethical, and compliant. How is the legal department in the World Bank embracing emerging technologies, and what are the steps being taken for lawyers to be abreast with these technologies to perform their roles of advising, drafting, representation, guiding, and shaping the legal needs of the World Bank, first as an internal client, and then also the stakeholders and partners of the bank? Thank you.
the gentleman right across from me. We would take 3 more questions. Please try to keep them short and brief.
Hey, good morning. My name is Matias Bonilla. I am from Costa Rica. My questions are for Prachi and Gustavo. You guys both got an LLM from NYU. I was going to ask what the decision behind getting the LLM specifically from NYU was. Do you think it's necessary to pursue an LLM before pivoting to the World Bank or international organizations?
One last question.
Thank you so much. My name is Nana. I'm originally from Ghana. And thank you so much for taking the time to do this. 2 quick questions to Prachi. Because you talked about networking or cold emailing people, I wanted to know what your thoughts are on like an approach that you can use and not come off as too transactional when cold emailing or reaching out to folks. And then again, I also want, this could be to any one of you. I'm curious about, so many a time you apply for these international organization jobs and you never get responses, but you believe that you've put your best foot forward in terms of putting together your resume, your cover letters and things. There's a lot of talk about AI screening of resumes and all that. From where you sit and from your experience, what are those things you'd say really distinguish the candidates that you eventually reach out to or the candidates that you shortlist for interviews, seeing the different resumes? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me start with a couple of questions on here, and then Gustavo, you can come in. I think on the skill gaps, and I'll speak as a lawyer trained in India, and you can see if that answer applies to lawyers trained in Africa and other developing countries. I remember when I started my LLM application journey, and I was working for a lawyer at that time who had done his LLM from the US, and asked him if he can take a look at my application. I sent in a CV that was 4 pages long. And mind you, I was still ahead maybe 2 years of experience, right? So the first thing he said was just sent it back and said, make this 1 page, and you don't need more than that. And that is something that I think is still very much a message that sticks with me. Even now, my CV is with 7-ish years more experience, 8 more years experience, it's still under 2 pages, right? And every time I go in to update my CV, I have 1 page with the main information, 1 page with deals, transactions, research, and publications. And I would highly, highly recommend sticking with that. And I think that also goes to the last question on distinguishing your application. Now that I have started looking at applications and thinking of candidates to shortlist, there's nothing more jarring than getting an 8-page CV. And again, we can talk about cultural differences and market expectations in different places are very different. But I think when you're applying for international organizations, especially the World Bank, one thing I consistently see is shorter CVs, your cover letter 1 to 1.5 page only, right? And I think that also in a way shows that you're able to answer a very broad question about why you are a good fit for this program in a very succinct manner. Kind of, your experience inside out to be able to give us a short, synthesized understanding. An LLM being necessary, I would say it depends on the position you're applying for. I think if you're looking at legal positions, many of them require you to be barred in at least 1 jurisdiction, and some of them require at least a master's requirement. So again, it depends on what you're applying for. Many jobs, of course, don't require a master's, so you could, but again, I think not having a master's does limit you. But also, if you're thinking of doing an LLM, especially in the US, I would also say do one of the bar exams, either New York, either California. I'm one of those people who keeps my options open. And even when I was doing an LLM, I was applying to international organizations, but I was also applying to law firms. I was also applying to banks. I was also applying to places back home. And having a foreign bar certification is so crucial. Even if you won't need it for practicing at an international organization, it again shows that you went through this effort. to take this exam, which is quite difficult. It's quite challenging if you've trained in a foreign jurisdiction and you made it. So even if it's not one of the requirements, if you're coming here, spending time, spending money, doing a foreign LLM, get the bar exam. On the AI, unfortunately, I don't work much with the practice group who works on that. So that would be a question for colleagues working on those aspects. So I'll have to defer that. Finally, on the cold email approach, again, similar to cover letter, you don't have to be very detailed, but give us a little bit of your background, give us why you're interested in learning about the bank, applying to any specific position, and give us a little bit more to start or continue the conversation. That doesn't come off as transactional for sure, and kind of an interest in something that might have been out there, like this event, or I remember talking to people who had worked on similar projects that I was interested in at the time, like energy projects that the bank was working on, for example. So kind of a common thread between your background and the work that they are doing kind of helps make that connection very short, to the point, not more than one scroll on your phone. Again, not to say that we are all very hoity-toity here, but just that it kind of helps get back to you as soon as possible. And one thing, not a lot of people do this, so please take it with a grain of salt. I'm just talking about things you should not do. Ask for a cold referral. I think there are options on when you're applying, especially to the bank, where staff can recommend people for jobs, but that takes a little bit of knowing someone, getting used to knowing what your background is, and many people are, of course, happy to provide referrals, but not right out of the gate. Again, not saying a lot of people do that, but just in terms of don'ts or things to avoid.
Starting on the latter point, I think that a good approach for an email is just ask the person to explain what they do, what is their day-to-day work, what they're focusing on. Like, try to understand a little bit more the position. If you approach with a question like, right, can you refer me to that? That's a little difficult to answer. So if you just ask me what I do, it will be something easy that I can sit down with you for half an hour over a coffee and share. But then how to refer is not something that we are usually able to do. So that's on that. And on the AI, just one comment on that. Again, not my area of expertise, but during LJD week, which just happened a couple of days ago, there were a couple of panels touching on some of the topics that you raised, and the recordings are available online. So do check that out. In a lot of these discussions, you may find there some inputs that you find valuable. On the skills, again, Prachi mentioned a little earlier, like 5 skills that honestly every position that you're applying in any international organization, they're like analytical skills, drafting skills, great command of English, and so forth. And this is something that you can build on any country in the world. And then more than that, you can, if you feel that there's something on that you have not developed enough, perhaps think about some lateral change in your home country. Try to get exposure to a different area. So you've been working in government and you feel that, right, my command of English has not been that great, or my drafting skills is not something that I practice enough. Try to find a job at a different sector where you will be doing that. So this is something that you can do before you apply that will definitely increase your chances down the line. About the screening and what you do in the recommendations and so forth, and the recommendations in our cover letter, again, see the requirements and try to build on that. So if there's a requirement saying, all right, you have worked with artificial intelligence, save a couple of lines to explain how have you worked with artificial intelligence. Just mention, like, all right, I had this task, I applied, I understood this way, and this is how I used that skill, and the result was that. So if you, I think that's a STAR method, I think something like that. Apply that to every requirement that you see in an application within the one page and with enough details and so forth. But this is a very good way for you for your application to have the right wording that will call someone's attention without, of course, being personal. This is something that Prachi mentioned. It's very valuable. Finally, on having an LLM first, I absolutely don't think it's a mandatory. Some positions require certain levels of academic excellence, so you might have to have a master's, but this does not translate into have an LLM. It can be a master's at your home country. So this is something for you to watch out for. And in the selection, again, this is something that I always talk to people when they want recommendations. Like, all right, which university should I apply to? Which university should I choose? And I always tell them, do extensive research about the universities you're applying and don't follow any rank that you might have in your mind about which universities are better for you because someone told you so. This is not the criteria. The criteria is what this university has to offer for me. An LLM is a big investment. This needs to pay off for you personally and professionally. So don't choose universities blindly just because you think they are the best for you. Make sure that you know they are the best for you, and this can be any university. So that's my advice on that.
Thank you very much for all your questions. Unfortunately, we're running out of time, and we will now move on to the closing remarks by Prachi.
Thank you, Balmes. So I think very short, because I think we ran over time a little bit. But thank you, everyone, for attending. I think as looking back through the kind of questions we discussed today, it's quite important that we keep having these sessions. And based on the questions you had, I think there is a real chance that, sometimes when you have been here in the institution or you have gone through the job process, you forget about all of the things that you once cried over. And talking about Gustavo's spreadsheet made me think about my own spreadsheet when I was applying for jobs. And there are so many things that you kind of start forgetting once in a while. So thank you, Balmes, for organizing this session. This has been really useful for me. And given your questions, I hope it has been useful for you. And please take a look at the vacancies that come up on the bank website. Again, everything goes through there. Look at people's journeys. There's so many lawyers we work with that have immense expertise in regulatory, in policy, in compliance, and specific technical issues. And we all work here together on different parts of the bank's work. Look beyond the legal aspects of the bank's work as well. There's so many governance and specific advisory work that the World Bank and other international organizations do that might be quite close to what you're working on. And as of always, feel free to reach out to colleagues whose work you find interesting. And thank you so much for taking the time on a Monday morning and holiday weekend to be here with us in person and online through different time zones. Thank you so much.
There's now an event that we could just stand outside and network a little bit. Thank you all for coming, and once again, congratulations for taking your first steps into an international career.